He invited his rejected mate to humiliate her. She arrived with Alpha's twins. The kingdom of Valthera stood beneath a silver sky, where the moon ruled not only the tides, but the hearts of wolves. Its forests were ancient. Its mountains held secrets older than memory. And at its center rose the Blackstone Palace, carved from dark rock that seemed to drink the light. From its highest tower flew the banner of the Alpha King, a silver wolf crowned in frost. King Kaelin Thorm ruled with strength that few questioned and a silence that many feared. His people respected him. His enemies avoided him. He carried power like a blade, sharp, controlled, and never lowered. But even kings have ghosts. 5 years ago, under a full moon bright enough to turn night into silver, Kaelin had stood in this very palace hall and rejected his fated mate. Her name had been Leora of the Silverwood. She was not from a powerful bloodline. She had no army behind her, no riches, no noble house. She carried only quiet strength and eyes the color of stormlight. The moon had chosen her for him. And before the gathered court, Kaelin had refused her. "You are not fit to stand beside a king," he had said, his voice cold and steady. The words had echoed against marble walls. Leora had not begged. She had not cried. She had simply looked at him, hurt shining in her eyes like shattered glass, and walked away beneath the moon that had once promised her everything. The bond between them had snapped that night, or so Kaelin believed.
Wow!
The kingdom prospered, but something in the palace felt hollow. The throne room was grand, yet quiet in a way that felt heavy. The wolves obeyed, yet the air itself seemed restless during full moons. Kaelin ignored it. Kings did not dwell on old choices. Instead, he prepared for a spectacle. The winter solstice banquet. It would be the largest gathering Valthera had seen in decades. Alphas from neighboring lands, noble families, royal advisors, and foreign guests would fill the palace halls. There would be music, silver goblets raised high, and declarations of strength. And there would be an invitation sent weeks earlier to a woman long forgotten by the court. The message had been simple. "Return to my court! Let the kingdom witness what becomes of a rejected mate." Some advisors had questioned the wisdom of it. Others had smiled in quiet approval. A reminder of dominance, they said. A warning to those who mistook fate for entitlement. Kaelin himself had written the words. He did not know why. Perhaps pride. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps something he refused to name. On the night of the banquet, the palace blazed with torchlight. Music drifted like golden threads through the air. Silk gowns shimmered, armor gleamed. Laughter echoed high beneath arched ceilings. Kaelin sat upon his throne, carved from black stone and lined with silver markings of the moon. His crown rested easy upon his dark hair. His expression revealed nothing. Guests approached one by one, offering greetings and alliances. He responded with calm authority. Yet his gaze often flicked toward the grand doors at the end of the hall, waiting, though he would never admit it. A whisper moved through the crowd near the entrance, subtle at first, then stronger. The music faltered. The heavy doors began to open. Cold air slipped into the hall, carrying the scent of pine and winter frost. All eyes turned. She stepped inside. But she was not the same girl who had walked away 5 years ago. She wore a gown the color of moonlit silver, flowing like mist around her. Her dark hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. A thin circlet of pale crystal rested upon her brow. Not a crown, but something ancient and quiet. She did not look broken. She did not look ashamed. She looked calm. Power moved around her like unseen wind. And she was not alone. At her side walked 2 boys, no older than 4 or 5 winters, identical in face and form, golden-eyed. The hall fell into complete silence. The twins walked with steady steps, neither shy nor afraid. Their small hands were linked with Leora's, but it was their eyes that made the air shift. They carried the unmistakable glow of alpha blood. Kalen felt it before he understood it. A pull in his chest, a sharp, burning awareness that made his fingers tighten against the arm of his throne. The scent reached him next. Familiar, impossible, his blood. Murmurs broke out across the hall. Are they? It cannot be. She left alone. Kalen rose slowly from his throne. The sound of his boots against stone echoed louder than the whispers. Leora stopped at the center of the hall, beneath the great silver chandelier shaped like a crescent moon. She did not bow. The twins did not bow. They simply looked at him. Kalen descended the steps of his throne, one at a time, each step measured. His face remained controlled, but inside, something ancient stirred. "You received my invitation," he said at last, his voice carrying easily through the silent hall. "I did," Leora replied. Her voice was steady, soft, but unshaken. "And you chose to come." Yes. Her gaze did not lower. Kalen's eyes moved to the children. The bond inside him trembled. "What is this?" he asked quietly. Leora's lips curved slightly. Not in mockery, not in sweetness, simply in truth. "This," she said, resting a hand gently on each child's shoulder, "is your legacy." The words landed like thunder. The twins continued to watch him with curious, intelligent eyes. Kalen felt the world narrow to the space between them. It was impossible. The bond had been severed. He had felt it break, and yet the boy's presence felt like standing before a mirror of his own power, raw and untamed. One of the twins tilted his head slightly. "Mother?" he asked softly. "Is this the king?" The hall seemed to hold its breath. Leora nodded. "Yes, Aaron." The other twin studied Kalen openly. "He looks like us," he observed. A faint ripple of shock moved through the gathered nobles. Kalen's heartbeat grew louder in his ears. "You dare bring them here," he said, though his voice lacked its usual sharp edge. "I was invited," Leora replied gently. "You wish the kingdom to witness what becomes of a rejected mate." Her gaze flickered around the hall. "So, let them witness." The words carried no anger, only quiet strength. Kalen felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. 5 years ago, he had believed rejecting her was necessary. A king required power beside him, not softness, strategy, not emotion. But the woman standing before him now radiated both strength and control. She was no longer the uncertain girl he dismissed. She was something forged. The torches lining the hall flickered suddenly, not from wind, from energy. A soft blue glow shimmered briefly along the walls. Gasps spread through the crowd. The twins' eyes glowed faintly in response, like stars catching fire. Kalen sensed it then, a ripple in the ancient magic tied to his bloodline. Something long dormant had awakened.
"You should not have come," he said quietly, stepping closer. "I came because I had to," Leora answered.
Their proximity reignited something deeper than pride. The broken mating bond pulsed faintly, like an echo refusing to die. "You left," he said, his voice lower now. "You sent me away," she corrected softly. The truth lingered between them. The twins looked back and forth between their parents, sensing the tension, though not understanding it fully. The air thickened. Some of the nobles shifted uncomfortably. This was not the humiliation they expected. This was something else. Kalen looked at the boys again. "If they are mine," he said carefully, "why return now?" Leora's gaze flickered, not with fear, but with something heavier. "Because the moon does not forget broken promises," she replied. As if summoned by her words, the torches flared bright blue. A low hum vibrated through the palace stones. The chandelier trembled. Outside, wolves began to howl.
Not in aggression. In warning.
The twins instinctively stepped closer to Leora, their small hands tightening around her gown. Kaelin felt the ancient curse tied to his royal blood stir like a waking beast. He had dismissed it as legend, a story meant to keep kings obedient to fate. But now, the palace walls seemed to breathe. "What have you done?" he demanded, though his voice was not entirely steady. Leora held his gaze.
"I did what I had to do to protect them." The blue glow intensified for a brief moment, casting strange shadows across the hall.
Then, just as suddenly, it faded. The torches returned to normal flame. The chandelier stilled. The howling ceased. But the silence that followed was heavier than before. Kaelin understood one thing clearly. This was no simple return. This was the beginning of something far larger than pride or reputation. He had invited her here to make a point. Instead, she had brought a storm to his doorstep. And as he looked into the identical golden eyes of the twins, he felt something he had not allowed himself in years. Uncertainty. The bond inside his chest gave a single painful pulse. Not broken. Waiting. The court still watched, unsure whether to kneel or flee. Leora stood tall beneath the silver light, the twins at her side. The past returned, the future uncertain. And deep beneath the palace stones, something ancient began to wake fully, something tied to rejected mates, to wounded pride, and to kings who believed themselves untouchable. The banquet of ashes had only just begun. And before the night was over, Valthera would remember that the moon always collects what it is owed. The morning after the banquet, Valthera awoke to whispers. The streets, lined with frost-covered cobblestones, were filled with merchants, soldiers, and villagers all murmuring the same question. "Did you see them? The twins?" And Leora? The palace, usually a place of strict order, seemed almost chaotic. Courtiers whispered behind closed doors. Advisors shuffled papers nervously. Even the guards, trained to obey without question, felt the air thick with tension. Kaelin Thorm sat in his private chamber, the morning sun struggling to pierce the heavy drapes. He stared at the polished black stone walls, the weight of his crown suddenly feeling heavier than ever. Pride, that sharp companion he had carried for decades, was now a fragile thing, trembling. The memory of the previous night burned in his mind. The way Leora had entered with calm determination, the golden eyes of the twins that mirrored his own, and the faint blue glow that had rippled through the hall, something unnatural yet undeniable. He had invited her to humiliate her, and yet she had humiliated him. A soft knock at the door broke his reverie. "Your Majesty," said Sir Dial, captain of the Royal Guard, stepping inside with careful posture. "The council requests your presence in the throne hall." Gailen did not respond immediately. Instead, he allowed silence to fill the room. His mind was tangled with questions he could not answer. Finally, he said, "I will go, but only because the council must not see fear in my eyes." Dale nodded, though even he sensed the tension beneath Kaelin's calm mask. The throne hall was crowded again, but unlike the previous night, there was a palpable unease in the air. Noble families whispered accusations. Rivals shot glances that carried threat rather than curiosity. The palace seemed to have shifted overnight, though Kaelin could not yet name why. Leora entered quietly, the twins walking beside her as always. They were calm, composed, as if they understood more than their age suggested. She did not speak to anyone, did not bow, did not react to the stares. Her presence alone seemed to command the room, and the courtiers quickly realized they had underestimated her. Kaelin's advisors stepped forward cautiously, Lord Baron, the oldest among them, spoke first. His voice was steady, but the strain beneath it was clear. "Your Majesty," he said, "the children, the twins, they show signs that cannot be ignored." Kaelin frowned. "Signs of what?" Lord Baron hesitated, then lowered his voice. "They are marked by the Moonfall Curse." The words fell like stones. Kaelin's heart thudded. "The Moonfall Curse?" "Yes," Varen replied, his tone grave. "It is an ancient affliction tied to the royal bloodline. Legend says that if an alpha rejects his fated mate, all descendants born of that bond carry a mark. If the bond is not restored, the curse grows stronger with each moon, threatening the heirs and the kingdom itself." Kaelin felt as though the room had tilted. The twins' presence, their golden eyes and quiet power, suddenly carried a weight he could not deny. The legends he had dismissed as stories for children were real, and now they were living in front of him. He turned to Leora. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held something sharp and unreadable. "You knew this," he said quietly. "Oh." "I did," she replied softly. "I could not risk the twins, the curse. It would destroy them if I left it unchecked, and it could touch you as well." Kaelin swallowed hard. Pride demanded he dismiss her, reject her warnings. But something deeper, older, warned him otherwise. He had thought himself untouchable. He had believed the past was behind him, but it was not. The twins, sensing the tension, stepped closer to Leora. Aaron, the older by mere minutes, tilted his head at Kaelin. "Father?" he asked innocently. Kaelin froze. The word struck him like lightning. He had never heard it from anyone but a wolf of his pack. And now, these small beings born of both love and rejection called him that. Leora placed a gentle hand on each of their heads.
"They do not yet understand," she said. "They will learn in time." The room fell silent again, the weight of prophecy pressing down on every shoulder.
Kaelin's advisors looked to him for guidance. His enemies, though hidden behind masks of politeness, were already calculating how to use this revelation to their advantage. Kaelin knew one thing clearly. He could not ignore the curse. Not if he wanted to protect the kingdom. And certainly not if he wanted to protect the children he had once dismissed. "Bring them to the chambers," he commanded, his voice steady, though his mind raced. "We need to understand what we are dealing with." She did not argue. The twins followed obediently, though their golden eyes lingered on Kaelin, curious and wary. As the doors closed behind them, the throne hall returned to whispers, but Kaelin did not hear them. He was already turning over the events of the past night in his mind, questioning every choice he had made, every word he had spoken. That night, in the privacy of the palace, Leora finally allowed Kaelin to see a glimpse of what she had carried all these years. She brought him to a small chamber high in the tower, where the wind howled against stone walls. A single lantern lit the room, casting shadows that danced like living creatures. The twins played quietly with small wooden figures, yet every movement they made seemed deliberate, controlled. Kaelin could not deny the aura of power they radiated. "Explain!" Kaelin said simply. Leora's lips pressed together. She did not flinch at his tone, nor did she raise her voice. She had endured enough to understand the weight of silence.
"The Moonfall Curse is real," she began. "It is tied to the rejection of a fated bond."
"When you rejected me, you severed more than a connection. You awakened something ancient. The twins, they carry its mark. If the bond is not restored, the curse will grow with each moon. It will touch them first, and eventually, it could touch you."
Kaelin's jaw tightened. "And yet you returned, knowing this would happen?"
I returned because I had no choice, she said, her voice steady.
"The curse is stronger than pride or fear. It will not wait for your forgiveness, King Thorn." it only moves forward. Kaelin felt a cold weight settle in his chest. All the decisions he had made, all the nights he had spent building walls around himself, seemed meaningless now. Leora had endured years of solitude and danger for their children, and he had spent those same years in ignorance, convinced that power was enough. "Then tell me what to do," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Tell me how to fix this." "The bond must be acknowledged," she said. "Not as a punishment, not as a command, but as a true recognition.
You must see us, me and the twins, not as extensions of your pride, but as family. The bond must be restored willingly, with understanding, with care."
Kaelin felt a flash of anger. Pride did not bend easily. Submission had never been his way, yet beneath that anger was something else. Fear, yes, but also longing. The same longing that had haunted him in the nights after she left. The same ache he had buried beneath crown and armor. He looked at the twins. Aaron reached for his hand, and Alric placed a small wooden sword on the floor before him. They did not demand love. They only acknowledged his presence, waiting, trusting. Kaelin knelt slightly, almost instinctively, though he did not touch them. The motion was foreign, humbling. His heart beat faster than it had in years. The weight of the past, of rejection, of failure, pressed upon him. You will guide me?" he asked quietly. Leora's eyes softened just slightly. "I will," she said, "but it will not be easy. The curse is patient, and so is its shadow. You will be tested, by the twins, by the court, by yourself." Kaelin nodded slowly. There was no turning back now. The choice was not simply between pride and regret. It was between failure and redemption, between darkness and the faint glimmer of a future he had almost lost. Suddenly, the lantern flickered violently. Shadows stretched across the walls like fingers. The twins froze, their small hands gripping Leora's. Kaelin tensed. Something was wrong. Something ancient stirred. A voice, soft and echoing, filled the chamber. Not Leora's, not the twins. A whisper, older than memory. "You have awakened me," it said, "and now you must pay the price." The room grew colder. The lantern's light dimmed, leaving shadows crawling along the walls. Kaelin stood, placing himself between the twins and whatever force lingered. Leora stepped forward beside him. Together, they faced the darkness in the chamber. The twins, though young, did not cry. They watched. They waited. Kaelin realized then that the trials would not come from outside alone. The real test would be within. The battle against pride, fear, and the ghosts of the past. He had invited her to witness humiliation. Instead, she had returned with a storm, and Valthera itself seemed to shiver in anticipation. The curse beneath the crown had begun its work, and Kaelin Thorne, the Alpha King, felt the first real fear he had ever known. The palace of Valthera seemed smaller at dawn, though the shadows had only grown longer. Every corridor, every tower whispered of secrets and consequences. Kaelin Thorne, Alpha King, walked alone through the high halls, the golden light of morning failing to warm the chill in his bones. The previous night's events weighed heavily on him. Leora's return, the twins' presence, and the words of the Moonfall curse echoed like a song he could not forget, a warning that carried both danger and promise. He reached the private garden, a small sanctuary above the cliffs where the wind swept over frozen fountains. There the scent of pine mingled with frost, and the snow on the stone path sparkled like scattered diamonds. Leora was already there, the twins playing quietly near a small marble bench. Aaron had gathered snow in his tiny hands and shaped it carefully, while Alric watched the wind blow through the branches above. They were calm, but their golden eyes seemed older than their years, aware of the tension surrounding them. Kaelin approached slowly, careful not to frighten them. When he reached the bench, he stopped and looked at Leora. Her presence was serene, yet there was an unmistakable power in her posture, power he had once dismissed, power that now demanded respect. "Why didn't you tell me about the pact?" he asked softly, almost afraid of the answer. Leora's gaze met his.
"Because you would not have believed me," she said. "Because some things cannot be explained in words."
"The curse is older than your crown, older than this kingdom, and it watches. Always." Kalen felt a tightening in his chest. The realization hit him harder than he expected. This was bigger than pride, bigger than the throne, bigger than even himself.
He knelt slowly beside the twins. They looked up at him, trusting yet cautious.
Erwin's small hand touched his cheek gently. Kalen inhaled sharply. This touch, this trust, carried a weight he had never known. "You are my sons?" he whispered. Leora nodded.
"Yes, but more than that, they are the key to breaking the curse."
Kalen's heart ached. He had spent years building walls around himself, believing that strength came from control. Now, standing beside the woman he had rejected and the children who were his own flesh and blood, he realized that true strength required something else: humility, patience, and love.
"You ask a lot of me," he said quietly, "and I have given you nothing."
"You gave them life," Leora replied.
That is more than you know. That is everything they need. A sudden gust of wind swept through the garden.
The snow danced in circles, and the twins instinctively raised their arms, feeling the stir of magic in the air. Kalen sensed it too, a presence older than time itself. It was Nyxara, the veiled mother. The air grew colder, and a shadow seemed to crawl across the stone paths. From it emerged a figure cloaked in silver and black, her face hidden beneath a veil of mist. She was neither wholly human nor entirely spirit, but something in between, something old and dangerous. "You have awakened me," the figure said, her voice echoing like the wind through mountains. "And now the debt must be paid." "I will face whatever comes," he said firmly, "but they are not yours to take." Nyxara's eyes glowed beneath the veil. "They are mine only if the bond is denied," she said. "The curse will grow with each moon. If it is not broken, the children belong to the night, and the kingdom will follow."
"You have one choice, Alpha King."
Leora stepped forward beside Kalen. "And that choice," she said softly, "is not simply for you. It is for all of us. For the kingdom." For them, Kalen felt the weight of the crown heavier than ever before. To restore the bond meant humility, meant facing the mistakes of the past, meant giving up control. The laws of kings demanded authority, but the laws of magic demanded truth. He took a deep breath, looking at the twins. Aaron smiled faintly, as if he already knew the choice Kalen would make. Ulrich's golden eyes shone with quiet determination. "You will guide me?" Kalen asked again, though his voice was steadier now.
"Yes," Leora said.
"But the journey will be difficult. The curse is patient."
"It tests not only your bond, but your heart. You must face your pride, your anger, and the darkness within."
Only then can the bond be restored.
Kalen nodded.
He felt fear, yes, but also a growing determination. He would not fail them. Not this time. Not when the lives of his sons, and perhaps even the fate of Althera itself, depended on him. For days, Kalen and Leora worked together. The palace became a place of quiet study and careful preparation. The twins learned to control the stirrings of their magic, to focus their energy without fear. Kalen practiced alongside them, learning to temper strength with patience. Leora watched, guiding him, correcting him, when pride threatened to take over. Each lesson was a battle against old habits, against the arrogance of a king who had never knelt for anyone. And yet, with each passing day, something changed. The bond between them, once broken, began to heal. not with words alone, but with understanding, trust, and shared purpose. Kalen found himself listening to Leora in a way he had never done before. Her insight, her wisdom, her quiet strength, they became a mirror for his own flaws, and he could no longer deny the depth of his feelings. One evening, under a crescent moon, the palace was quiet. The twins slept in their chamber, their small breaths rising and falling in unison. Kalen and Leora stood on the balcony overlooking the frozen gardens, the wind carrying the scent of pine and snow. "You have changed," Leora said softly, her eyes reflecting the pale moonlight. "You see them as they are, not as a reflection of your pride."
Kalen remained silent for a moment, letting the words settle. Then he said, "I have no choice, not if I want to protect them, and not if I want to protect us."
Leora's hand brushed against his. A small gesture, yet it carried the weight of trust, forgiveness, and unspoken longing. Kalen felt a warmth spread through him, breaking through the cold walls he had built around his heart. But even as peace seemed possible, a shadow lingered. Nyxara had not vanished entirely. The veiled mother's warning echoed in Kalen's mind. The curse would not be broken without true understanding, and the price of failure would be immense. The next day the council gathered again, their faces masks of concern and suspicion. Kalen stood before them, the twins beside Leora, and spoke with a calm authority that carried more than mere words.
"The twins are my sons," he declared. "They are the heirs of Valfera, not because of law alone, but because of blood, bond, and responsibility. I will protect them.
I will guide them, and I will acknowledge the bond I once rejected, not out of weakness, but out of duty and love." Murmurs swept through the council. Some were shocked, others angered. A few watched in quiet admiration, but none could deny the determination in Kalen's voice, nor the presence of Leora and the twins, whose golden eyes glowed with quiet power. The council left with uneasy acceptance, but Kalen knew the challenge was far from over. The Moonfall curse would continue to test them, its shadow reaching deeper with every night. That evening, as the moon rose high and full over the frozen lands of Valfera, Kalen found himself alone in the garden again. The wind carried a whisper, faint yet insistent, and the snow seemed to shimmer with unseen magic.
"You have chosen wisely," a voice said.
Not Leora's, not the twins, Nyxara's. But the path is not finished. The bond must be proven. Only then will the curse be broken fully. Kalen closed his eyes, taking in the cold night air. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, but so did a strange, quiet hope. He had faced pride, fear, and doubt, and he had chosen something far harder than command. He had chosen humility, love, and protection, and in that choice he felt the first stirrings of redemption. Aaron's small voice broke the silence. "Father?" Kalen opened his eyes. The boy's golden eyes looked up at him, full of trust. Ulrich's small hand touched his arm as well. Kalen knelt, closing the distance between them.
"I will protect you. I will not fail you."
Leora watched from the balcony steps, her expression unreadable but calm. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of relief. The wind howled, carrying voices from the north forests. Wolves answered, howling in harmony. Their song was not a warning this time. It was a call, acknowledging the awakening of something ancient, something tied to the bond now being rebuilt. The Moonfall curse was still present. The shadow was still waiting. But for the first time, Kalen Thorn, Alpha King, felt the power stronger than fear, love. The blood moon rose slowly over Valfera, casting the kingdom in a crimson glow. The mountains and forests seemed alive with shadows, the air thick with expectation. Wolves howled from distant peaks, their voices carrying across frozen rivers. echoing through valleys and brushing the walls of Blackstone Palace. Kalen Thorne, Alpha King, stood on the balcony of the Grand Hall, the cold wind biting his face. His dark hair whipped around him as he stared at the moon, feeling the pull of something older and deeper than magic, older than even his own pride. The moonfall curse had awakened fully. Its shadow loomed over him, over Leora, and most of all over the twins. The twins, Aaron and Alric, stood beside Leora, their golden eyes glowing faintly under the red light. They were silent, aware that this night carried power beyond any story they had ever heard. Though they were children, something in their gaze reflected the awareness of their role. They were the heirs of an ancient destiny, the key to the kingdom's survival. Leora's hand rested lightly on Kalen's arm. Her presence was calm, yet her eyes held fire. The years of solitude, struggle, and preparation had shaped her into someone beyond any memory of the girl he had once rejected. "The council will act tonight," she said softly, her voice carrying over the wind. "They see the curse as weakness. If they challenge us, they will not understand the cost." Galen nodded. "I do not care about the council," he said. "They will follow, or they will fall behind. My focus is here, on you, on them, on the bond we have to restore." The red light of the blood moon deepened. Shadows shifted in impossible patterns across the palace walls, whispering like voices from a long-forgotten world. The moonfall curse was fully awake, and Nixara, the veiled mother, lingered unseen in the wind, measuring each heartbeat, each choice. Inside the throne room, the council had gathered. Lords and advisors, once loyal, now wore expressions of suspicion and fear. They demanded proof of Kalen's fitness to rule. Some whispered of rebellion, others of magic too powerful to control. Kalen stepped forward. Leora and the twins followed. His cloak of black and silver trailed behind him like a shadow. He did not hesitate. His eyes met each council member's gaze, in turn. "This night," Kalen said, his voice steady and strong, "I stand before you not as a king seeking approval, but as a father and protector. The twins are my sons. The bond I once rejected is being restored, not for ceremony, not for tradition, but for survival and for truth." Some bristled. Others studied him with suspicion. Kalen's chest tightened as he felt the weight of their judgment. But he no longer feared it. Fear had no place here. Only courage, humility, and action. Leora stepped forward beside him. "The moonfall curse is real," she said.
It touches those who reject what is chosen, but it can be broken.
If the bond is acknowledged, if it is accepted and nurtured, the curse will end. The kingdom will survive. "The children will be safe." The twins looked up at Kalen, waiting. Their small hands gripped Leora's, drawing strength from her calm presence. Aaron tilted his head. "Father," he said softly, "will it hurt?" Kalen knelt slowly before them, feeling the weight of the moment.
"No," he whispered. "It will not hurt."
"I promise I will protect you." He placed his hand lightly on Aaron's head, then on Ulrich's. A pulse of warmth spread through him, through the room, through the very stones of the palace. The red light of the blood moon seemed to flicker in response, and for a brief moment the shadows hesitated. Nixara's voice came on the wind, low and echoing. "You have chosen wisely, but the bond must be proven." Kaelen understood immediately. The test was not the council, not the curse itself. The test was within pride, fear, and old mistakes. He had to face every part of himself he had tried to hide, his arrogance, his anger, and the years of ignoring what mattered most. He looked at Leora. Her eyes held no accusation, only patience, understanding, and strength. She had endured more than he could ever imagine, yet here she was, guiding him, trusting him, demanding nothing but truth. "Then we begin," he said. The palace seemed to hold its breath as he rose, standing fully before the council, the children, and the curse itself. He lowered his head slightly, not in shame, but in acknowledgement.
"I acknowledge the bond I once denied," Kalen said. "I accept the responsibility it carries, and I will honor it fully."
Not for tradition, not for power, but because it is right. A hush fell over the throne room. Even the council was quiet, their whispers gone. The moonfall curse stirred, sensing the shift in the king's heart. Shadows moved across the walls, no longer threatening, but observant, waiting to see if the bond was genuine. The twins' hands reached out, connecting with Kalen's. Aaron smiled faintly. Ulrich mirrored him. In that moment, a warmth spread through the room, touching every corner, every heart, every shadow. The palace itself seemed to exhale, and the wind carried the sound of approval. A soft echo through mountains and forests. Kalen felt it then. The bond, once broken, was restoring itself, not because of magic alone, but because of trust, devotion, and choice. Nixara appeared at last, materializing in silver mist before the throne. Her veil lifted slightly, revealing eyes that reflected the moon itself.
"The bond is true," she said. "The curse is broken." The council gasped.
Then others looked unsure, but even suspicion could not mask the shift in power that had taken place. Kalen stood tall, the weight of the crown no longer oppressive, but balanced by truth. Leora joined him, her hand brushing against his, a silent acknowledgement of what had been achieved. The twins stood proudly between them, their small forms glowing faintly in the moonlight. Outside, the wolves of the northern forests howled in chorus, their voices carried far, signaling to the land that a new era had begun. The blood moon, once a harbinger of danger, now shone as a symbol of balance, of redemption, and of the strength found in unity. For the first time in years, Kalen felt something he had long forgotten. Peace, not the peace of conquest or fear, but the peace of trust, love, and purpose fulfilled. But even as he allowed himself a moment of relief, he knew the future would bring new challenges. The world beyond Valthera's borders had watched the awakening of the twins and the restoration of the bond. Powerful forces, long patient, would not ignore this display of strength and truth. Kalen looked at Leora, then at the children, and then back at the horizon.
"We are ready," he said quietly, "no matter what comes."
"Together," she said. The twins echoed her silently, standing between their parents, their golden eyes shining bright under the fading red light of the moon. The palace seemed to hum with energy, the shadows no longer threatening but protective, as if the very land itself acknowledged the shift in power, the restoration of the bond, and the courage it took to choose love over pride. Kalen lowered his hand onto the twins' shoulders once more. "We will face whatever comes," he said.
"And we will do it as one."
Not king and subject, not alpha and mate, but as a family. The blood moon began to fade, leaving the sky pale and silver once more. Wolves still howled, but their voices now carried the promise of protection, not warning. The moonfall curse had been broken, but its lessons remained. True power was not in dominance, but in understanding, courage, and the bonds one nurtured. Leora rested her hand in Kalen's, her eyes reflecting the early dawn. "We have much to rebuild," she said softly. Kalen nodded, feeling the truth of her words. "And we will." Together, the twins held each other's hands, then reached out to their parents, forming a circle of trust, love, and protection. In that circle, Kalen understood something he had never truly known. Redemption was not earned by conquest or fear. Redemption was earned by choice, by facing one's flaws, and by protecting those who mattered most. The palace doors opened to the rising sun, spilling light over the land of Valthera. The kingdom, once uncertain, now had hope. The heirs, marked by prophecy, stood safe. The bond, once broken by pride, now glowed stronger than any shadow. And far beyond the mountains, in lands that had waited silently for generations, eyes watched. Forces that had lain dormant stirred. But they saw not weakness, but strength. And they knew that the Alpha who chose love over fear was ready for whatever challenge came next. Kalen looked at Leora, at the twins, and finally allowed himself a small, honest smile. "No matter what comes," he whispered, "we face it as one." And with that, the first light of dawn bathed Valthera in silver and gold, marking the beginning of a new era. An era built not on fear, but on trust, courage, and the unbreakable bond of a family forged in shadow and light. The blood moon had passed, the curse had ended, and the Alpha, his mate, and their children stood ready to face whatever the world might bring, together.